Should I just go ahead and start?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Jen's gonna introduce you. Oh, that's my bad.
Sorry, I'm the I mean, I don't know. It doesn't whoever.
I'll let you do it. You're good at
it. So Helen, we're glad you're here with us. Helen is our Canadian representative for TYCA, and our one and only, right?
So.
Yeah, so it's all yours.
All right. Share my screen. There, can you see my screen? All right, so my presentation or my conversation with you is called Undone Boundaries Between Work, School, and Regular Life. Please unmute. I'm just gonna move around here a little bit. So this is how.
Unmute?
Oh, sorry. Am I on mute?
I'm sorry.
No, but we lost your screen share.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I took my screen share off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is how I imagine this session going. It would be great if we could just have a conversation about this topic. So yeah, that's great that you have your pumpkin spice latte, your coffee, and your dog. Let's chat, both literally and also in the chat feature. So the purpose of this workshop is to share experiences and learn from each other about how we have navigated work life at home, where the physical boundary was erased. So let's just sit down and talk about how we have established kind of hypothetical boundaries between the home office and the home office turned work office. And, you know, how we've all done this with this remote university work. So that'd be great if we could unmute. Background noises are welcome as long as they don't disrupt. I know some students have sometimes said, well, I'm gonna have to turn this on mute because my budgie's flying around my office right now.
Well, speaking of muting and unmuting, I lived through external home renovations when we discovered water issues in 2020. So not only was the pandemic happening, but while I was teaching in my dining room, because we don't have a dedicated home office, because I've never needed one before, there was sawing, hammering, all sorts of things going on outside while I was trying to hear everything I needed to hear. So there was a lot of muting and unmuting. Now, I will say I enjoyed the commute because my bedroom is right there. So it's a 30-foot walk for me to get to my office. So I do appreciate that. And I have a cat sleeping and snoring on my dining room table because I put a cat bed similar to Kim's chair for the dog. I have a cat bed on my dining room table, AKA desk. So there were things that I enjoyed about it. And there were things that were a little bit tough to work around. So
yeah.
That was really tough for me, like deciding, being okay with people knowing that I let my kids on the table. Like, some people are grossed out by that, but that's just my house, okay?
Honestly, I don't think I've actually eaten on this table more than maybe 3 times. We're not very formal in my house. So it really just turned into, oh, this is a room I never used before. I guess I'll use it.
One of the challenges I have had is that my father lives with me. And there's a lot of health issues and he can't hear. So what happens is when I have to get on a Zoom or whatever, he will invariably head to the kitchen and start making all kinds of noise, you know, banging pots and pans and washing dishes. And I have to explain to him, even with the headset, I can hear all that, you know, and when I'm on here, I'm one of those people, I need to have silence. I might have music playing when I'm grading or something, but I can't have all this other noise. And he just is not getting that concept. And I lived alone for 10 years after I got divorced, and he's been here for 4 years, and I'm more stressed out than ever. Because
Yeah.
I'm used to being alone. So that's been tough because there is no boundary.
Yeah.
And And then my sister, who helps with his medical care, is like, well, you can take him to the doctor because you don't have to go to the office anymore. But then a whole day goes by and I've gotten no work done. So it's a good thing I don't sleep. So I could be working at 3 a.m. You never know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Those are some of the challenges that we live with. So part of my presentation here was also the land acknowledgement. I appreciated the land acknowledgement on the TYCA schedule. So the University of Winnipeg, where I come from, is located on the traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene people, and on the Métis homeland. And yesterday, actually, September 30th, was the very first day that we had a national holiday recognizing the National Truth and Reconciliation, where the whole country was remembering the damage done by residential schools in our country. So it was a pretty powerful experience. I joined a march with probably about 10,000 people. It's called the Orange Shirt Day because on the first day that a residential school survivor, when she went to residential school, she wore an orange shirt that she was really proud of. And when she got there on the first day, they stripped the orange shirt off her and dressed her in how she was supposed to be dressed. And the children's hair were cut, and they were not allowed to speak their language, and their culture was stripped from them. So now, in honor of the many children that went to residential school, it was an Orange Shirt Day. So this crowd of 10,000 people that marched downtown Winnipeg, everyone was wearing an orange shirt. And so also recently, I don't know whether you read in the news, this year there were many unmarked graves discovered on residential school sites across Canada. So it's been a really, really tough time in terms of people recognizing the harm done by the historical past. So that's the land acknowledgement at the University of Winnipeg. And here's my family. That's me in the middle, in the front, holding my adorable baby granddaughter, Adeline. And I teach at the University of Winnipeg. I teach all kinds of writing classes. The classes that I'm teaching this term are, I'm training the tutors for our writing center. The tutors take a 3-credit-hour training course, and then we hire them as tutors in the writing center. And another new class that I've never taught before is new journalism. So that one's a lot of fun, where the students are working on a reportage throughout the semester. So those are some of the fun classes that I get to teach. Another class that I facilitate in our department, it's called Representations of Indigeneity. And I bring in a lot of guest speakers, Indigenous guest speakers, to teach students about the history of Canada and Indigenous people. All right, so when we were driving down through town one day, then we saw this church, and they were doing drive-through confessions, which I thought was really, really humorous. And then I've read about it, and there are a lot of people that sometimes they drive up to 2 hours just for a drive-through confession. I thought, isn't that interesting? And that's how I came upon the idea of, like, let's do some confessions as to what have we actually done while we've been on Zoom, and how have we navigated this very new, different life. Like, as we speak, I'm also in another, I'm taking a workshop this morning. So I just told the workshop leader, sorry, I just have to step out for a little bit. I'll be back later though. So those are some of the things that we try to how we try to figure out how this is all going to go. So I have some questions that I was going to put in the chat, and then we can talk about some of those things and how we have figured out how to work and how to balance all these things. But I thought we would start out with introductions, where you could say your name, where you're from, where you teach, and what you love about your job. And then we'll go, then we'll move on with some of the other questions that I have. Does that sound okay? All right, so how about we start with, I'll call on you where you are on my screen. Carol, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name's Carol Levert, and I am from Hawkeye Community College in Waterloo, Iowa. And I teach writing, Comp 1, Comp 2, sometimes a little bit of literature. What I love about my job, I think the realization, because we got to actually go back face to face this semester, and the realization that that's really why I was teaching, was to be with the students, not in a virtual land.
Oh, thank you. How about you, Robin?
Hi, I'm Robin. I teach at Indiana State University, and I'm the director of the Writing Center here. I remember your Writing Center presentation from last year. And I also teach composition courses, like history of the language and grammar. And what I love about my job is just thinking about the impact that we have on our students and trying to kind of model the type of person I hope they become.
Well, thank you. How about you, Jen?
Yeah, so I'm Jen Richrath. I teach at Illinois Central College in Peoria, Illinois. I teach English, like the first transfer level English course mainly, like Comp 1 kind of thing. Intro to Lit, Survey of Film, and Contemporary Humanities. Those are my main courses. And the thing I love about my job, I'm a lifer faculty member that will never change. And I feel as though at times when things get, when maybe I don't agree with some of the decisions that the leadership at the college is making, I always go back and focus on my students.
Yep.
Because they are what brings me joy, and that environment is what I can control. So.
Nice. Thank you. How about you, John?
John Fallon, I teach, well, I just retired from a technical college last June, and now I'm an adjunct instructor at 2 local universities.
Oh, okay. Nice. How about you, Rich?
My name is Rich Parrott. I teach at St. Louis Community College, and I'm on what used to be the humanities campus. I don't know. Administrators are changing lots of things. But I teach mostly composition, Comp 1, Comp 2, and literature, as Carol said, when I get the chance to. And I also love being in the classroom and making that connection with the student and being silly with them, but also pushing them and watching them respond to that or not respond to it. I think especially in this COVID moment, I'm more aware of the formation part of education as opposed to just here's how you write a paragraph or here's how you write a narrative essay. But just sort of here's what it means to be in an academic community, and here's how we respect each other in this community, because it's so different from, I think, what they're getting in social media and politics right now. And that just gives me great light. That's what keeps me going right now. So
Nice. That's great. That's what I've always found from faculty that come to TYCA conferences. Y'all love your jobs.
yeah, so far.
Yeah. That's nice. How about Kimberly?
Yeah, I'm Kim Hilton. I teach at Ivy Tech Community College in Indianapolis, and I mostly teach Comp 1, some tech writing and intro to poetry, and some developmental. I usually teach completely online, and now I have to do a couple virtual classes, which I'm not real whipped about. So for me, asynchronous works better. And so the favorite part of my job is I can help students that's the only way they could go to school is asynchronous, and to make that experience as good as it can be.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, that's great. How about you, Laura?
I'm Laura Myers. I'm in Waterloo at Hawkeye 2, but in developmental, we've been back since just right after the last, we were back all last year too. So we've been in the classroom the whole time. And so that's really important to me. I like to be with students. I think the reason I really like my job, I teach developmental reading, usually sometimes writing, is the kind of the conflagration of immigrants, ESL people, refugees, traditional students. And I spend a lot of time with my students outside of the classroom where they become part of our family. My daughter-in-law is a first generation immigrant, and her experiences sort of mimic a lot of my students' experiences. And a couple of my nieces were adopted from other countries, and my kids kind of live all over the world. So I get to bring what's important to our family into the classroom And I don't know, I just love the student having a varied student experience in one group and kind of learning from each other.
Oh, that's great. How about you, Margot? Nice to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you too. I teach at Illinois Central College, like Jen, and I teach Comp 1 and developmental writing. It's a ALP course. I teach Intro to Literature. I teach a humanities course. One of my favorite courses is a international studies class on Africa. I teach that as well. And I guess one of my favorite things about teaching, and I've been doing it quite a long time now, almost 30 years, I'd say is the people. Kind of like Jen said, when other things really annoy me, or, you know, I think we should do better in this or that or whatever, I just think about the relationships with the people, whether that's colleagues or students or whatever, because I kind of like to see how students, they can be annoying, but they can be funny, they can be all kinds of things, and just to see them kind of blossom, no matter the age, no matter the background, just to see them trying and struggling and challenging themselves and succeeding and not succeeding, all of that is just really interesting to me. So that's what I like.
Oh, that's nice. How about you, Sybil?
Sorry I'm late. I was popping around to make sure everybody's like, everything's kosher. I missed your question, but based off of the answers, I think I'm supposed to tell you I'm teaching at NDSCS in Wapton, North Dakota State College of Science. Long name, tiny college. Been here 17 years, and I teach College Comp 1 and 2 and creative writing. We went remote for like a couple of months in 2020. And so I've been face-to-face since last year. We had a mask mandate last year, and this year we are requiring it again. So I've been reading eyeballs for 2 years, or feels like 2 years, a year and a half. And I really miss seeing their facial expressions. I miss them being able to see mine, because I feel like, I know I have resting bitch face most of the time, but I also feel like I make a lot of sound effects that are very pertinent to my teaching style, and they don't always hear my sound effects. Like, they're very important. And I think they need to see my goofy face when I'm making a goofy face. And so sometimes I'm like explaining myself now more in class, like, hey, no, I'm being sarcastic, everybody. Like, I'm like, I know you can only see my eyeballs, but I'm being sarcastic. And the one thing I did do when the pandemic hit was, besides panic, I've taught one particular class since 2006 completely online every semester. It's College Comp 2. I developed it. It's kind of one of my babies. And when the pandemic hit, I thought, I need to make everything asynchronous, because I'm going to have students from here on out who are, whether it'll be climate change or another pandemic, they're going to need to get my information, probably not from me, to my, face to face. And I know that's part of the high flex model. That's probably the one piece of the high flex model that I'm going to keep with me, is that no matter if students can't be in my class because they're sick, because they have to go to court, because their families are not doing so hot, I love the fact that now I can say, hey, everything's online. Just go to our course. You should be able to figure out what's going on. And that's probably the one cool thing I did, was just like, I'm like, you know what, screw this. They might not get to see me face to face forever now, because this whole pandemic thing, whatever. I think the other question you might have asked is, what's your favorite part of your job? And like Margot said, I do like the people, but I want to be very specific about the kinds of people that I like. So I got to tell you, we've had so much chaos on campus in the past. I was faculty council president at one point, wanted to hurt people, wanted to hurt them. And my classrooms were like like I would go into in my classrooms and be like, hey, can you guys keep me here for a while? I don't want to go to a meeting. I'm supposed to go to a meeting, but I hate everybody. Can you guys just like keep me here? Ask me lots of questions. Then when I walk into the meeting late, I'd be like, oh, my students kept me. Sorry, like tough luck, like my students matter more to me. And my students thought it was really kind of comical, but I was like, no, I'm not kidding. I don't want to go to any more meetings about these stupid faculty members. And I want to can I hide here? And I just would anyway, I just love them. I wish I could see their full faces. I've told them now that I'll probably see them out and about after all this is done, right? And they'll probably recognize me because I have pictures online to try to make sure they know who the hell I am. But they'll probably be like, hey, Preeby, you know, like in Walmart. And I'll be like, yep, hi. Like, I already have a bad case of not knowing names. I'm like, John, yeah, sure. Hi. I don't know.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah, I do think the one little nugget I can share, and I think we're going to get to it in one of the workshops, and I think I might have mentioned it in my prose poem last night, is that I've just stopped being a dick. I just stopped being a jerk to them. And it probably should have happened years ago. It really should have. But I think I grew up with like these very traditional English teachers or mentors saying, you have to do this, Sybil. You got to be a bitch. You got to do this. Otherwise, they're just going to run all over you. And now I'm like, have you noticed that when you're nice to them, they're nice back? It's very strange. Like my vertigo that I've been talking about, I told my students I have it. Now they're like, if I don't grade something or update the grade book, they're like, whatevs. So it's really nice. When you extend grace to them, they extend it back. So sorry I'm late. I'm sorry I took up so much damn time, but there's my,
No problem. Well, great to see all of you. I hope this is going to be okay for us to have a conversation. Thank you very much for telling me about those things. And yeah, that I think we can learn a lot from each other. And that's so true, Sybil. Recently, you know, I always have my face showing when we have Zoom classes, but not all the students do. But one student in one of my classes did. He was always there. And then we had hired a lawn care company to come and do something with our lawn, and someone rang the doorbell, and I opened the door, and we just kind of started at each other. And he said, "Oh my goodness, Professor Friesen." I said, "Oh my goodness, David, we meet for the first time." So we've had some interesting meetings like that, but I also know that there are a lot of students that don't ever show their faces. So when I go out in public, I look up at these young people and I think they could be my students and I would have no idea, and they could be recognizing me, but I have no idea who they are. So it's a really interesting kind of situation that we're in. So I see that a lot of you have gone back to in-person classes. Here in Winnipeg, we're still kind of partially on Zoom and partially in person. So one of my classes is an in-person class and one is in a Zoom class. So then we have to juggle both of those things, where I have my Zoom class. Since I have my home office all set up for Zoom classes, I just stay at home for that. But then I have to quickly get on my bike and bike downtown so that I can go to my in-person class. So it's a lot of juggling. So I have a couple of questions. What I will do is I'll post them in the chat and we'll go as long as, I think this session goes until 11, right? Until 11. So then you can either chat in the chat or we can have a conversation. And if you're teaching all in person, a lot of my questions are pertaining to how things go in Zoom and how you've struggled that home life and home office balance. So feel free to answer. And maybe we'll just go ahead and when you have something to say, just say something or chat in the chat. And this is my very first question. So what have you all juggled simultaneously while in a Zoom meeting or in a class? What have you all been able to do all at the same time? I was kind of horrified recently. I was in my in-person class, and in my online classes, very often I'll check my phone just to make sure. I'll have my cell phone here on the side because I'll check whether students are having a problem connecting. So then I would go to my email and make sure that they have the link again or something like that. But I never ever check my cell phone when I'm in an in-person class because I always tell my students out, you know, to put their cell phones away. And then recently I was in my in-person class and suddenly I was on my phone checking to see whether students needed something, and then I just put my phone away. Like, don't do that. Don't bring your cell phone out, Helen. So what kind of things have you all juggled while you've been on a Zoom meeting and have been able to manage? Sometimes I'm just surprised at how efficient one can be. Probably not with 100% attention to one thing, but you're getting a lot of stuff done.
Yeah, I'm actually like today I'm excited because I love all of the TYCA people. And so I'm excited and engaged in this particular Zoom. And I know this is being recorded and I'm okay with saying it. Some meetings I am not quite this engaged in. And therefore, I have found that my multitasking abilities are pretty good. So I may have a screen open and grading something, and I may have, I've actually had an office hour. Because if I get into Zoom on my phone, I can be in a different one than the one that I'm in, even with the same account.
Oh,
And
wow.
my office hours open on my phone in case someone's going to drop in and check with me while I'm actually attending another meeting. So it's, I don't know that I'm terribly effective at all of those things at the same time, but I can do them, but gosh, darn it.
I'll jump in. I mean, we were only, in our department, we're only on Zoom just that March 2020. But sometimes I'll stay home if I have meetings and do those at home. And I have this like whole thing where like in front of the camera, it looks like everything's calm, but beneath me, my dogs are going insane. And my husband's always worked from home. And so I can hear all of his like business conversations. And I'm doing these, like, I've learned how to like say a lot with my eyes, like get the dog because he's going insane. Well, from the front, it's on obviously mute, but I look like I'm actually, I'm doing a lot of nodding, that kind of stuff. And my kids are texting me and I'm all answering those off screen, but in class, I am face to face. So I keep it together sort of.
Yeah. And so, Rich, did you want to talk about all the things that you get done while you're in a Zoom meeting?
Well, I just, as a, kind of like Jen's, when we have our department meetings, I just put in the wireless headset and I get a lot of things done around the house. But when I'm teaching, I'm more like John said, where like, that's what I'm doing. And, but I was last semester, I was teaching virtually in Zoom at home, and my neighbor started a rototill actually on my property right next to the room I was in. And so I was confused by a lot of things. One, in that he was turning up my lawn, but so that was pretty distracting, and the students got to learn how I handled that situation. But we quick took a 5-minute break. I said, I've got to figure this out, and then came back. And but yeah, that was one of the big disruptions. But yeah, I've been pretty good actually about focusing in at home in the Zoom class when I'm leading the class. But I also know, as I treat them where I'm in a meeting, I know my students are doing the same thing with their wireless headsets. They're walking around, doing whatever, playing video game, whatever they're doing. But yeah.
Well, one time when I was conducting a Zoom class, I didn't have my speaker on, so you could hear the background noise, and these military planes were flying over. And I said, do you hear those military planes flying over? And then one of the students said, yep, they're flying over my house now. So we were all connected with the same surround sound.
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
it separated and have those things that bring you together.
Yeah, exactly. That was super interesting, and something that one wouldn't experience otherwise. Here we are all sitting in our offices all around the city, and yet we're connected with the same sound that's going on. We didn't have anyone tearing up our lawn at the moment, but we did hear the surround sound. Yeah, that.
I really did appreciate too during the online, and we can kind of choose if we're back on campus or not. So I'm sort of there and not there at the same time. But I really enjoyed, and I'm not requiring them to turn cameras on because of the articles I've read about whether or not we should do that, because some of them need that privacy and don't want to show us into their homes. But there was, there were moments, especially during that first, like when everyone was really quarantining, like right at the beginning, there were really interesting, like letting me into their lives. Like one of the students saw my cat walk across the screen and went, oh, I want to show you my dog, and took his laptop all the way through the house to run and find where the dog was. And then I never would have seen that student's dog if we were in a face-to-face class. Like I got into parts of their lives that I wouldn't have been able to see. So as much as I too appreciate the face-to-face contact with them, there's parts of the online that I really enjoyed and kind of embraced during the moment, just because I couldn't change it. So
yeah, for sure. Thank you. So I have the next question that I have is, what have your students actually been doing during class? So I asked that question of my students. So what were you actually doing during class now that we're back in person for one class? And then to hear what they say has been really funny, or what their classmates were doing while they were in class. So I had one student say, oh, my classmate one time the student was snowboarding and they were taking the class as they were snowboarding down the mountain. Like, wow, what a great thing to snowboard and take a class at the same time. And a lot of students have really appreciated the being able to do classes remotely. So now they're all over Canada. So they go choose to live somewhere else, and they're taking the class from Medicine Hat or from Vancouver or somewhere else. So it's actually working out pretty well. Or one student was getting a COVID test while they were in class. Oh, I'm just getting a COVID test. So all these things, and sometimes or they're eating or drinking, which is perfectly fine, or playing with their pets. And sometimes I have absolutely no idea whether they were even in class, because they click in and then their screen shows that they're there, and it's at the end of the class, and I say, so Jason, do you have any questions? You're still there. No answer. So who knows where Jason is? And so then I just end the meeting and off we go, and he'll realize later that, the class is finished. So
I used to do that too. Well, they never would put their cameras on. So
Yeah.
then I'd say, hey, so-and-so, I'll give you $100 if you put your camera on. Nothing.
No.
They weren't there.
Lots of sleeping. Oh yeah. How did you know they were sleeping?
Because they told me later, like
they told
it was
you.
the same thing at the end of the session. They were still sitting in there and nobody's there. And then later they'd send me an email and say, oh, sorry, Mr. Parada, I fell asleep during class. Or I had one student once went on vacation during the semester. And so she was checking in from wherever she was, when because our first question was, how are you traveling right now? But anyway, so she's on the beach and we were up here, and at that time it was cold, and so that was a little bit of fun. But I never had anybody doing the COVID jab during class. That would be a different
Yeah.
that would change everything.
Yeah. Well, some of the places, I also got to travel then because I have permanent residency in the US and my husband is an American citizen. We were able to cross the border during the pandemic. So we went to see our daughter who lives in Kansas. So at sometimes my class, I was Zooming in from my daughter's basement in Kansas, or then we went to see my husband's sister who lives in Arkansas. The next time I was in Arkansas, and then my department said, my department chair said, where are you now, Helen? So we were always really careful when we traveled, and we tried not, and we got tested before we went to the US to make sure that we weren't carrying any virus, and we got tested a lot while we were there. So we also were able to travel somewhat and do our classes from here and there, which kind of gave us the idea, this might be kind of nice to work remotely. And well, my next question is, what are some of the highlights or faves of remote learning teaching?
Mine is just what you said. I was able to, when we were doing that, to go and be with my kids. They're all over the place, and I could just set up in a room there.
Yeah.
One of them's 5 hours different though, and I didn't really factor that in. And so I got there, and I was going to be there for a couple of weeks, and it was like I was getting up at what would normally be 4 a.m. to teach a 9 o'clock class, which was not great. And so. In one, I was in a hotel room for a couple of days, and it was 4 a.m. where we were. And my husband was just like, seriously, because I had to make it look like it was daytime. And so I set up like a little office in the hotel room, but in the background, he snores pretty loud. So there was like me throwing pencils at him, and it worked.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite things about it was that Zoom makes everyone like the same size and the same volume. So those quieter students are brought to the front, and everyone, I feel like, has a more equal part in the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Like in a classroom, sometimes when I ask a question and then there'll be silence, then on Zoom, then I would just say, well, let's take that to chat. And so then I'd put the question in the chat, and then there would be all kinds of activity in the chat. So I really liked that feature. So once we were back in person, then I thought, well, how can I keep that feature? And so that I came up with this idea, well, let's give the students all Post-it notes. If they have questions or comments that they don't feel comfortable, that they would use that. But that totally and completely did not work, because then they would have to go put it somewhere. That took away that anonymity which there was on chat. So I haven't figured out that chat feature, how to bring that into the classroom for the quiet students, for them to participate. So any ideas you have for class design? Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, class design. Yeah. Yeah, and thank you, John, for that. It takes a while to learn how to do that. You know, just like anything else, we have to learn, and we weren't really trained. We just got there you go, there's Zoom. Figure out how to do that, and the pedagogical strategies that one needs to move into a different environment like Zoom it's a learning experience for sure.
So to respond to that, Helen, when we got kicked off into Zoom, into online in March of 2020, my goal was like to lose as few students as possible.
Oh, okay.
Like, let's at least take the course credit with you. Don't fail now because we switched domains. So that was it, really. Like, I wasn't worried about learning objectives anymore. I mean, we still had them and so on. I just wanted to like do as little harm as possible.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, I have the summer to prepare for fall. I'll make a real class, because our administration told us right away that next fall we're all online. So I spent summer and I made it. And you know what? It still stunk. Like, I can't believe this. It is still not good. And then I took the whole December break again for spring, and it finally hit, and it was so rewarding. And then I retired. Like, I'm glad I didn't retire one semester earlier, because that would have been a bad memory to take away. But it takes a few times. It's just like learning. You know, you forget what learning's like. It just doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I've been an online teacher for the better part of 2 decades, and March of 2020 floored me, and I kept thinking about my colleagues who had not done it before, and basically because I had never taken a face-to-face class and changed it. Like, I had always had online classes and face-to-face classes, knew how to do them both. Never had I done that. And so, similar to John, I was like, I'm going to carry these people on my back over the finish line. Like, we're getting through this, even like, no matter what, I don't want to lose them. But that was those boundaries that you talk about in the title of the presentation, that those 2 months of trying to take something that had been set up one way and then think about all of those students who some of them had never learned in that environment before, and all of that. There were no boundaries. I was losing sleep. I was working 20 out of hours a day. I mean, it was just, and then also, you know, filled with anxiety and wondering if the world was ending. So at the beginning of all of that, it was terribly intense and crazy. But getting to the end of that was also rewarding. And similarly to what Sybil was saying about the high flex model that she used, I'm going to go forward from here on out so that if anything like this ever happens again, I don't have a March, April, May, like I did in 2020. And I really am just kind of utilizing our learning management system, which we're in the process of converting from Blackboard to Canvas, but I'm using that now as
always fun.
If somebody gets sick, they can take the class. The rest of the information is online, and they don't have to. I mean, it seemed like it would be crazy not to be prepared based on what we've been through. So it ended up being a positive, but man, was that a stressful time.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I have that too in my course outline now, just in case we have to go back online. We're prepared to switch from one week to the next. We'll just move it all online. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, all of you. Very nice to see you, and thank you for your enthusiasm and your good ideas. Always good to connect with TYCA Midwest.
Agreed.
Thank you, Helen.
We will
Thank you.
definitely have to be support for each other. When
Yes, for sure.
I just saw your chat.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.